Okay, just you and me. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. That's good, leave it. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Mishpad Paramahamsa Parujikacharya Ashtotar the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parujikacharya Ashtotar the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All right, so before we begin, I think we're at the top, near the top of page 541 in the middle of this purport, which I vow we're going to finish tonight. So, I think the function of the tongue, let's see. Okay. All right, I'll tell you where we'll begin. Bottom of page 540, after we chant the verse, where it says the senses should only be gratified. I think that's a good place to start. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of July 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The title is 13, the chapter is 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. And we're going to finish text 8 to 12 today, reading the Sanskrit at the bottom of 537. Amanitvam adambitvam ahangsa chantararjavam acharyopasanam shaucham Stayam atma viningraha indriyartheshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam, asaktirana vishvanga, putradara griharishu, nityam cha samachittatvam, ishtanistopapattishu, mahichananya yogena, bhaktirabhya vicharini, vivikta desha sevitvam, adatir janasangsadi, adhyatma jnana nityatvam, tattva jnanat darshanam, eta jnanamati proktam, ajnanam yadatonyata. Translation. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. Okay, so we're going to pick up this purport in the bottom of page 540 with the sentence, the senses should only be gratified. The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. Thank you. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. As far as the eyes are concerned, they should not be allowed to see anything but the beautiful form of Krishna. That will control the eyes. Similarly, the ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna, and the nose in smelling the flowers offered to Krishna. This is the process of devotional service, and it is understood here that the Bhagavad Gita is simply expounding the science of devotional service. Devotional service is the main and sole objective. Unintelligent commentators on the Bhagavad Gita try to divert the mind of the reader to other subjects, but there is no other subject in the Bhagavad Gita than devotional service. False ego. So this is the next quality. What is it? Anahankara evacha. In text number 9. You see it? Okay. See, now this is how I lose my place. Okay. False ego means accepting this body as oneself. When one understands that he is not his body and his spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10, it is said, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. The sense of I am is ego. But when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. When the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego, but we cannot give up our ego, because the ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with the body. Then comes Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshana Darshanam. Very important line. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and disease. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child's stay in the womb of the mother, its suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. It should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful. Because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, we do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed. And as far as disease and old age are concerned, everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased, and no one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. As for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. They are natural objects of affection, but when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna, have some discussion on books like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If one can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there is no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it is not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did. Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instruction of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. Okay, let's see. That next line, Nityam Chasamachittadvam, that's what he's speaking on now. Happiness and distress are concomitant factors of material life. One should learn to tolerate, as advised in the Bhagavad Gita. One can never restrict the coming and going of happiness and distress. So one should be detached from the materialistic way of life and be automatically equipoised in both cases. Generally, when we get something desirable, we are very happy. And when we get something undesirable, we are distressed. But if we are actually in the spiritual position, these things will not agitate us. To reach that stage, we have to practice unbreakable devotional service. Devotional service to Krishna without deviation means engaging oneself in the 9 processes of devotional service: chanting, hearing, worshipping, offering respect, etc., as described in the last verse of the 9th chapter. That process should be followed. So now he's come to this very important line, Mai chananya yogena bhaktida vibicharini, which Prabhupada says is the most important line, because without that, the others don't have any meaning. And then he goes on. Naturally, when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic men. That's the Vivikta Desha Sevatvam, isolation. That would go against his grain. One must test himself by seeing how far he is inclined to live in a solitary place without unwanted association. Naturally, a devotee has no taste for unnecessary sporting or cinema going or enjoying some social function, because he understands that these are simply a waste of time. There are many research scholars and philosophers who study sex life or some other subject, but according to the Bhagavad Gita, such research work and philosophical speculation have no value. That is more or less nonsensical. According to the Bhagavad Gita, one should make research by philosophical discretion into the nature of the soul. One should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. Then he goes on, Adhyatma Jnana Nityadvam. As far as self-realization is concerned, it is clearly stated here that bhakti yoga is especially practical. As soon as there is a question of devotion, one must consider the relationship between the supersoul and the individual soul. The individual soul and the supersoul cannot be one, at least not in the bhakti conception, the devotional conception of life. The service of the individual soul to the Supreme Soul is eternal, nityam, as it is clearly stated. So bhakti, or devotional service, is eternal. One should be established in that philosophical conception. Okay. Yadhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.11, this is explained. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam. Those who are actually knowers of the absolute truth know that the self, capital S, is realized in three phases, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the last word in the realization of the absolute truth. Therefore, one should reach up to that platform of understanding. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, up to that platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That is the perfection of knowledge. So now he has a little review, paragraph. Beginning from practicing humility, up to the point of realization of the Supreme Truth, the absolute personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor and going up to the top floor. Now, on this staircase, there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second or the third floor, etc. But unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at a lower stage of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God and at the same time make advancement in spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. It is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. To think oneself God is most puffed up. Although the living entity is always being kicked by the stringent laws of material nature, he still thinks, I am God, because of ignorance. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material nature. One must know and be convinced of this truth. Okay, I promised we would finish the purport, and we did. Now let's go on. Om jnanatimirandasya jnanandana salakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So this is one of Prabhupada's classic purports that can be read again and again. It really should be studied and discussed. There are so many important instructions here and revelations. These 20 different elements of knowledge are all, integral to our progress in bhakti. As we discussed yesterday, the humility is the foundation, because this humility is essential for approaching a spiritual master and getting that flow of knowledge to come. So that humility, submissiveness, and ardent hearing, and willingness to do service, that opens the floodgates. And then the realized soul is ready to pour out his knowledge that way. So Srila Prabhupada is actually doing that in every one of his purports, and here he's systematically going through. So we'll begin where we started here, just a quick review. The senses. The senses are tied up with the mind. In fact, it's often said that the mind is the sixth sense. There's a verse in the 15th chapter, Mamai Vangso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manakshishtan Indriyani Prakritistani Karshati. Krishna is giving a little summary of our constitutional position. Mama Eva Anksha. This word Anksha is really important. Anksha means a particle, just like a little drop of water or a sun ray. The drop of seawater has the same chemical composition. You analyze it, it'll be salty, it'll be a little bit of gold in there, it'll be a little, magnesium or whatever, because it's part and parcel of the whole sea. The sun rays, they all have some light, they all have some heat, right? That's what the sun rays do. They're little photons, and billions and trillions of them. And they emanate light and they emanate some heat. But it's very minute. The sun is practically inconceivably hot and emanates so much light, right? So similarly, Krishna is the supreme para Brahman. He's Brahman. Brahman means spirit. Prabhupada quotes this one little phrase, which is oftentimes the first thing we used to learn when we joined the ashram. I learned it, and then we teach it to all the new guys. Aham Brahmasmi. You ever hear that before? Yeah, it's still current. It's very basic. It means I am spirit. I'm Brahman, not this material body. That's the foundation of all our progress. So, aham brahmasmi. So Krishna can also say Aham Brahmasmi, you see? But he is Para Brahman. We are Anu Brahman. We are little particles of spirit. And he is like infinite spirit. So we have the same qualities in minute degree. And our role, our actual constitutional position, which is called the Swarup, is to serve. Just like this hand that I have here. The hand is part of the body. You can't say it's not part of the body. It's also my body, but it's not the whole body. It's part of the body. So what's the function of this hand? To serve me. It's doing my will, right? If I want to pick up this water, if I want to turn the page, whatever it does. We don't think twice. It's an extension of our will. If the hand suddenly can't do that, if it's paralyzed, then you'll do a lot to try to fix it if you can, right? But it's not really in its constitutional position as a hand. It's a hand in name only, right? It's shaped like a hand, but it doesn't do anything like a hand. So similarly, we've lost our constitutional position in the spiritual world. We are not separate from Krishna, because we can never be separate from Krishna. He's always there in our heart, and he's everywhere, right? Krishna is everywhere. We learn that right on. He's all pervading. He's in every atom, right? He's within our heart. But we can forget. This is Maya's function, Maya Devi, who's an expansion of Srimati Radharani, Krishna's internal energy. But Maya Devi's function is to keep us in illusion, to test us constantly, to see if we're ready to go back to Krishna. You know? And so we wanted to enjoy separately, so she makes that possible. She covers our memory, our knowledge. She provides all of this material energy, lower energy of Krishna, which is really a reflection of the spiritual world. Just like we have a body that's similar to Krishna's. The atheists are into anthropomorphism. They think, no, you can concoct this God of yours in a human form because we have a human form. You see? Just backwards. In other words, they don't believe in God, in any kind of God. It's all just a concoction. So they're mostly hopeless. You know, some of them can come around, but it's very hard once you can convince yourself of that, you know. So Maya Devi provides all of these means by which we can stay in illusion if we really want to. So we're really kind of caught here. We're in a bind. The only way that we can get out is if someone, I love this word, gives us an intervention. Isn't that a thing with drug addicts, right? If someone is, you know, right? It's very common. Someone gets so much, caught up in drugs or alcohol that you can't help yourself because the senses have taken over. You know, you've taken this drug or whatever, and your will is now, subsumed under this drug. I mean, this is what addiction means, right? So how can you be helped? Someone who cares about you has to come and grab you, say, "You're ruining your life. You're gonna lose your wife. You're losing your life, and come with me. I'm taking you to rehab." And if you surrender and you say, "Okay, you're right. You can help me," then there's a chance. And what's the actual principle of that? To get you out of the environment in which you're so addicted, and put you into an environment where there's structure, there are others the same problem, and you can give each other strength. This of course has to be a leader, someone who you can call on a higher power. Isn't that a whole thing? I mean, AA. I went to some meetings, and not that I was addicted to alcohol, but I was invited to go. It's right up the street. It's a big one in the church. Yeah. And to try to be as ecumenical as possible, they don't, try to emphasize any one religion, but this idea of calling on a higher power, and then to give you the strength to resist, and then you have all your friends, they got the coins. I've been clean for, 6 weeks. Wow, congratulations, Bob, it's very good, And so people hope to get a coin like that, I was thinking... Because they wanted me to speak, because it's a similar thing, and I did give a little talk. But mostly they want you to, it's for alcoholics. So I used to drink alcohol back when I was 18. So we're talking like 58 years ago, And so I used to drink beer. I didn't get into, and thank God I didn't get into any heavy drugs. This is the 60s. So anyway, I would have to have a coin. I have a coin for 55 years. My name is Dravida Dasa. This is how it goes. My name is Dravida Dasa, and I'm an alcoholic. But I have this coin. It says I've been clean for 55 years. It wouldn't have worked with so well anyway. But the point is, the principle is the same. I even have a book they gave me. I can bring it up. The principle is very similar to ashram life and spiritual life, because everyone is addicted. This verse that I quote is very interesting. Mamai Bangso Jiva Lokam. We all have books. 15:7. Let's turn to that verse. It's very pertinent to our discussion here. Key verse. Everyone have it? 599. Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha Manakshishtan Indriyani Prakatistani Karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So the mind is counted as one of the senses. It's the center of the senses, you see. So we're struggling. Prakriti-sthani, we're situated in Prakriti, and we're covered by this desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, and the modes of nature. We're in the different modes of nature. So this knowledge Krishna is giving us is that we're part and parcel of Krishna, and our natural constitutional position, our swarup, is to enjoy with Krishna on the same level practically. He's Anandamaya Vyasad. Have you ever heard this phrase? You've heard it before. This is another one of these sutras from Vedanta Sutra. Ananda, we know, is bliss. Maya means full of, made of, Vyasad. By his activities, we can see how Krishna is always enjoying. Even when he's killing the demons, it's all just play for him. He's enjoying. So Anandamaya Vyasa, it makes perfect sense. If there is a God and he's all powerful, and he must be, if then he's not God. So that means that whatever he wants to happen is going to happen. So why would he choose to be unhappy? Now, how he chooses to be happy is important, because we're experienced with all kinds of degrading kinds of sense gratification. But God's happiness is completely wholesome and completely pure, and it's based on loving exchange, interaction. That's the basis of happiness. And you really realize in this world that that's the basis of what people really call lasting happiness, some kind of loving relationship. The tragedy is that they're all temporary. No matter how wholesome and wonderful some relationship is, it just means you're setting yourself up for a whole bunch of pain when it breaks, either by time, or the person leaves you or dies or whatever. That's how it goes. A mother and child, the purest form of love in this world, Prabhupada said, because it's completely selfless. The mother simply cares for the welfare of the child and is happy if the child is smiling, little teeth are coming out. It's not say smile or else. Otherwise I'm the. It's not like there's some kind of there's no bargain going on there. It's just that if the child is healthy and happy and is growing nicely, the mother is fulfilled. That's the pure. But what happens? The kid grows up to be a rascal, right? And they'll leave home or whatever, do things, defy the mother. In other words, it has to break. So, but that kind of selfless love is what we are meant to have for Krishna, simply to make Krishna happy. That's Radharani's whole meditation. When you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's at the very end, in the explanation of the Shikshashtaka. What does Radharani say there? This is very instructive. I mean, it's quite advanced, but the principle is the same in every stage of devotion. Ashlishva paradatang panashtamam adarshanan marmahatang karotu va yatatata va badadhatu lambato mat prananatas tuzeva napara. Let Madhava embrace me, or let him trample me. He can do whatever he likes. He's a restless debauchee. In other words, I understand completely, but it doesn't matter to me. No matter what he does, he is my only Lord and will always be my only Lord. And then Lord Chaitanya explains that verse. He actually wrote this, and it's this whole thing where Radharani says, "I care only for the happiness of Krishna." This is the basic principle of pure bhakti. And if he wants to be with some other gopi, I'll take her hand and bring him to Krishna, and I'll be completely happy. This is not an ordinary love affair, I mean, characterized by so much jealousy and envy and anger and disappointment, and depression. No. He said, this is the meditation of the highest devotees, the gopis, simply to make Krishna happy. It looks on the outside superficially like some love affair, but it's not some ordinary love affair. Krishna's Kaviraj in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 4 of the Adi Leela. It's a very key chapter. There he explains the position of Radharani and the gopis, and he defines in one little shloka, one of these little Bengali shlokas, the difference between prema and kama. Now we know from Bhagavad Gita that kama is our worst enemy. What is right there in the end of the 3rd chapter? Because kama covers our knowledge. That's how knowledge becomes covered. And it induces us to do things that are against our own best interests. So kama is, passion, sex life, and everything that goes with it. It means that any great material desire we have, and this is what our life is made of, material life. So, what does it say? Atmandriya priti vancha tare bale kam. Krishnandriya priti icha dare prem nam. It's a very simple syllogism to learn. The desire to enjoy one's own senses is kama in all its varieties. The desire to please Krishna's senses is prema. And kama is nothing but prema that's been curdled, if you will, by contact with the modes of nature. When we come down from the spiritual world because we wanted to be independent of Krishna, then we're given this world, which is a reflection. It's a fake spiritual world. We think it's a field of enjoyment, but it's really meant for our punishment. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. And so there's one apparent opportunity to enjoy and control that then is destroyed, and we have to go on to another one until finally we die and take another birth. And we've been doing this for millions of births. This is a chance to get back to our constitutional position. And the way of doing it is by absorbing this Bhagavad Gita and learning these principles of knowledge. So one should not cater to the demands of the senses. The senses need to be controlled in the beginning. In that section in the 3rd chapter, Krishna says, Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyam yambaratarshaba. Therefore, since the senses, the mind and the intelligence are sitting places of this lust, the first thing one has to do is control the senses. Just like, someone comes and is interested, so we say, well, would you like to chant? Chant japa? Yeah, okay, I'll try it. So you give them a set of beads, and then you teach them the mantra. Hopefully it doesn't take more than 2 minutes. It's very simple, and if you don't remember it, there it is. So it's a very simple, but very profound, very powerful. So then the person has to control his senses. There's a million things he can do with his tongue, but now he has to do Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And so the whole thing is taking these wild senses in the mind, which are addicted, which are accustomed to trying to get gratification, self-gratification, to be linked up with Krishna. The arati happens, the curtains will open, as they always do, right, at 8:15. So suddenly we can see Krishna, we can chant, right, the ears are involved, we can feel the heat, the Mitri will bring around the lamp. And so you get the touch, you get the sight, you get the thing. Later on there'll be some prasadam, you can taste the tongue, right? And what did I leave out? The smell. So you got the incense, the flower. After the pandemic is finally over, we'll be able to smell the flowers. So the point is, all the senses are engaged. It's scientific. The Pancharatrika Vidhi. There's a whole shastra for what we have here. We may have modified it a bit, Prabhupada did, but the principle is there. So that's the opposite of sense gratification. It's using your senses for Krishna's gratification. So how can that be pleasing? Because we're part and parcel of Krishna. Now, there's this principle of achintya beta tattva. Someone other than Alex, who can tell me what that means? Raise your hand. Okay, back to Chris. Yeah, so the audience can hear.
Simultaneously different and the same.
Right. And what's the achintya part?
Inconceivable?
Yeah, inconceivably simultaneous. It's quite a, far out concept, but you got it right, yeah. So what does that mean? It means that we're one with Krishna, and we're also different from Krishna. Now in bhakti, the difference is emphasized, because that enables the bhakti. The Mayavadis, they don't think there's a difference. They think there's only oneness. And the difference is all completely illusory. But that ruins the whole concept of bhakti. No, we are eternally. That's in the verse that we read in the 15th chapter just now. Mave vangsa jiva loka jiva bhuta sanatanaha. Sanatana means eternal. And Prabhupada makes it into an adverb. Eternally. We're eternally a little part of Krishna. An anksha, you see? That means that's our constitutional position. So we're simultaneously one with indifference. Now, it's good to think of the oneness also. Because the oneness means that when Krishna is pleased by our activities, then we're pleased. That's how it works. If we do some bhakti and we're conscious that, oh, this is pleasing to Krishna because we know that the authorities of spiritual master are pleased, we can know Krishna is pleased. You know, if you come to the kirtan, you chant Hare Krishna and dance, we can be sure that's pleasing to Krishna. We know that. And you can see that's why it's pleasing to you. And especially if you're hearing with great attention, you know, and chanting and with enthusiasm. That's Lord Chaitanya's mission. The easiest thing. It costs nothing. But the reason why it's pleasing is, you know, not because of the beat and the music. That's the rapping. The reason is because Krishna loves to see us do that. You know, and therefore we get a little fillip of ecstasy. You know, and if we control our mind and we get absorbed, we get purified, we get more and more. So that's why the happiest situation in earth, or anywhere or outside of earth, you know, in the transcendental, in the spiritual world, everywhere, is to be steadily in the situation of serving Krishna's desires, pleasing Krishna. The whole Bhagavad Gita is meant for that. Krishna wants Arjuna to fight. He doesn't want to fight. He's in Maya. He's been covered so that the Gita could be spoken. He's a great intimate devotee. He's a friend of Krishna. But he's covered for this purpose. He says, no, I have so much love and attachment for my cousins, the sons of Dhritarashtra, you know, who tried to kill him and his brothers, but forget about that. You know, and plus there's my grandfather Bhishma Dev, my beloved teacher. He taught me so much, and I have so many other relatives and friends. You know, who cares about the kingdom? He's seeing it in the material sense. He's fighting to get a kingdom. No, he's fighting to please Krishna. He's not thinking that, you know, fighting to get a kingdom. So the kingdom will be soaked with the blood of the people I love. So who needs this? You know. On the other side, he knows that Krishna wants him to fight, that he's God. You know. So he's in a dilemma. Drops his bow, sits down, crying. You know. And finally, he said, "Well, I'm not getting any headway here." So the key verse 2:7, he surrenders to Krishna as his guru rather than a friend. No more friendly talks. Prabhupada says, I hear him on the tape, friendly talks you can go on forever and not make any headway. One guy said something, the other guy said something, you know, but you're not going anywhere. So Krishna's the ideal guru, and Arjuna surrenders, and immediately he starts receiving the knowledge, and so do we. And the first thing is, don't lament for the body, yours or anyone else's. Ashochanam, Ashochetram, Pragyavanam, Shabasase. Then, next lesson, Dehinosmin yata dehi. You know, you're going through the body, you're a spirit soul. Your body has changed. You've been transmigrating since birth. You know, after 2 months, the parents are so happy to see the child is getting fat, you know, and he's smiling a little bit, you know, and he's trying to move his arms. It's a different body. He's not that little, you know, helpless little being came out. He's still helpless, but he's trying to so he's growing. Same person, but the body's growing, and it continues throughout your life, kind of changing, you know. And so who are you? You're the non-changing knower of the body, the knower of the field. We're studying that here, you know. Najay and nahanyate hanyamane sharire, which means, when the body dies or is killed or whatever, for whatever reason, the soul goes on. You get another body, depending on your consciousness, which you cultivated during that lifetime, and your karma, and your activities. So that's the basic principle. So the first thing is control the senses and engage them in the service of Krishna. He said, Prabhupada, the tongue is so important. Prasadam is central to the whole practice, you know, right? Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting. Okay, and the eyes, everything should be engaged. Okay, false ego. You know, we can't give up ego. We can give up false ego. False ego centers on the body and the mind, where you're born, what color you are, what language you speak, all of this. These are all upadis. Upadis, you know that word? Upadis means designations, false designations. What it says on your driver's license, right? The name that we was given, your address. There's a picture of you, of your body. I just had to redo my license, I've had it, like every 5 years or something, So I said, all right, I'm worried about the eye test, I got new glasses and everything. And then they said, well, because of COVID, we got such a backlog, you can put it off for a year. Yeah, literally. You don't have to come in at the end of last year, 2020. You can wait later. So I said, okay, great. So I waited and waited. And finally they sent me a notice. But it wasn't to come in. It was a little survey. Have you had any mental breakdowns? Little things, old people sometimes get. I said, no. And so they said, okay, you're in. And they sent me another license with the old picture. So now they got a picture that's like 15 years old. It doesn't look like me. Barely looks like me. If I get stopped, they say, that's not you. No, that's not, But that's a false designation. That's what they want to know. There's 4 things that define, the name, a form, what you look like, your qualities, and your activities. Nama, guna, rupa, lila. Nama, rupa, guna, lila, sorry. It's the same thing that defines Krishna. But with Krishna, every one of those is absolute. So if you just chant the name purely, you'll realize the form. He'll reveal to you. And then the qualities and the pastimes will all come out. But what usually happens, you become interested in Krishna, then you're exposed to the Shastra, which really describes all these things. Okay, I'm going to get in trouble. Does anyone want to ask any questions, locally or remotely?
Yes, I have a question.
How can you not have a question? All right, make it quick. Go ahead, Vijay.
But we didn't get there yet. You are explaining the purpose, and my question is related to aspiring to live in a solitary place and detachment from the general mass of people. So if not for today, I can wait until you get to these 2 qualities.
Yeah, but the problem is we're spending too much time. I wanted to finish it all up today. So go ahead and ask. We'll jump ahead.
Prabhu, thank you very much. My obeisances. Dravida Prabhu, you know better than me that there is no difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. Both of them are God. Lord Krishna is the all-attractive God, and Lord Chaitanya is the same God in the guise of a devotee of God.
Okay.
But my question is related to the following. Here I see that Lord Krishna is chanting to Arjuna that you should go for aspiring to live in a solitary place, and you should also go for detaching yourself from the general mass of people. But contrary to this, Lord Chaitanya is creating a movement which he wants to become a mass movement. Chants for spiritual upliftment for each one and everyone. Yeah. So my question is as follows: in what measure these 2 propositions are in harmony, made by the same God?
Yes. Prabhupada explains this elsewhere. Vivikta Desha Sevidvam. Because some of these are like echoes from the 6th chapter, right? Live in a solitary place, go alone through the Himalayas and sit and meditate. Which Prabhupada makes it very clear. Arjuna makes it very clear. It's not possible for him to do it, and what to speak about. Very few can do that, But even so, they generally don't rise up to the problems of prema bhakti. So, what is this isolated place? What does it go? Oh, here, a solitary place. I forget, where is that in the purport? Oh boy. Okay. How much is stress? Is it before or after detachment from children, wife, home, and the rest?
It begins with naturally when one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, he will not want to mix with materialistic man.
Okay, here we go. Okay. He will not want to mix with materialistic men. So the idea is that as far as possible, you take control of your environment as far as you can, which is, say, the home life. Prabhupada talks about that, where you make your home into a little temple. In other words, this is where it's important to have a partner, a wife or a husband, who are devotees. It's an absolute disaster if you want to be a devotee to marry someone who's not a devotee. I mean, you can imagine how difficult that is. But if everything is you're on the same page, and you want to raise the children properly, so you can make your home into a temple so that it is a fortress, kind of, meaning that it's a way of counteracting the influence of the modes of nature, which is going to be there at work or whatever like that. It's not ideal because it's you still have to deal with the karmis, the conditioned souls. But even then, if you're strong enough, you can have an influence that they get closer to Krishna, even at work. So the idea is that in this age, the process of elevation is Sankirtan. Sankirtan means chanting together. Prabhupada taught. I remember he was just saying. I think I heard him on. In every household, if you want to be Krishna conscious, you sit down like morning and evening, and you get together like before dinner or whatever. You have a little temple room or place where that's is most sanctified, and you sit down. You don't even need any instruments. You said you can just clap and chant Hare Krishna. This is Sankirtan. If you can, maybe get some kartals. Maybe a little drum. But the point is, it's feasible. It can be done, and in that way, you maintain your environment, at least for the part that you can control. That's very uplifting and can counteract the influence of outside. Now, for those fortunate few who can, want to really make quick advancement as far as possible, and maybe even in this lifetime to go back to Godhead, then Prabhupada worked very hard to establish these temples and ashrams, so that you can remain detached and have a full diet, and as much as possible, this association, the deities, prasadam, chanting, kirtan, festivals, it's a great opportunity for those who can, jump in and try to go for broke this lifetime. So the point is that Krishna's, as Lord Chaitanya does, it's a very widespread movement. In other words, everyone is welcome. But there is these rules and regulations. If you're a householder, then in the house, then certain things have to go on, and certain things can't go on. Otherwise, you can make a farce out of it, and what'll happen is that it'll be a phase that you go through in your life. I've seen that. Yeah, I tried Hare Krishna. I did that, and I still have to. I still like Prabhupada. I mean, I see them devoted to Rath Yatra. Sometimes I come. In other words, you've made a commitment to not really try as hard as possible this lifetime. It's not easy to counteract all of the conditioning we've been in for all these lifetimes. But the mantra is so powerful, and the process is so powerful that if you try, if you're determined, and you're determined to do it, you can develop the spiritual strength, so you can stay on the path and be steady. That's one of the ones, steadiness, right? So one of the things that helps is essential is your environment. Lord Chaitanya was asked, how can I recognize a devotee? You remember that? And in CC, Asat Sangha Tyaga E Vaishnava Achar, Stri Sangha Eka Sadhu Krishna Bhakta Ar. The first thing is to give up the association of non-devotees, because association inevitably affects you. There's a famous line, Sangat Sanjayate Kama. By your association, your desires develop, what you're associated with. So asat sangha tyaga, a Vaishnava achar. Who is that asat that you have to avoid? Asat sangha. Stri sangi. Those who are too attached to women, sense gratification in general. It begins with sex desire. So that's what you have to be careful of that. And the other is Krishna Bhakta, impersonalists. You don't associate with them, supposed spiritualists. So that's what the ashram is for, the shelter. That's what the temple's for, the mats. In places where you can gather and get spiritual strength. And just like, right, any of us, you guys have taken shelter, and you see there's a real value to it if you're serious. Where else are you going to find the environment where, even if it's possible, even if you have the Bhagavad Gita on your shelf, you can have a nightly class, and discuss and have a kirtan, And there's only so much you can do through the internet, It's too easy to shut it off. If you live with devotees, it's much more powerful, obviously. So the Vivikta Desha Sevatvam means that we should avoid any intimate association with non-devotees. We should, as far as possible, associate with devotees and create an environment in our living condition where we have some control, where everything reminds us of Krishna. That's practical in this age. All right, I think we're going to go on tomorrow to text number 13. This should be studied on your own. You could spend a week or more, or 10 days on this one purport. It's so rich. But I think that we've done fairly well. So, if anyone doesn't have any objection, I'm going to do a few little poems, because we should end with something sweet. Not that Krishna Katha is not sweet in all the, but especially sweet. So this is a nice little prayer to have Krishna, to always be able to see Krishna's wonderful lotus face in your heart. What do you think? Nice, huh? Rupa Goswami says, Smita Ruchi Makadanda Syandi Vaktrara Vindam Tapapada Padahangsan Vishta Gandham Mukunda Vidichita Pashupari Netra Saranga Rangam Mamadidiyata Dage Sangamangi Karotu. So he wants the lotus face of Krishna to be manifest in his heart. So he compares his heart to a lake that lotus can grow in, So is it from the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. You can think of Giridhari, beautiful. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus, which does ere their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. What do you think? Could we pray like that? Why not? Hare Krishna. Okay, one more. So then, here's one that's a classic. This is at the beginning of the text of chapter 21. Near the beginning, where the gopis are singing of Krishna as he plays the flute, he goes into the forest. Venu Gita. So this is wonderful verse describing Krishna. Barha pidam natabadavapu karneyo karnikaram bibradvasak kanaka kapisham vaijayanting chamalam randranveno hadadasudayapur yan gopa vrindaranyam swapatanam pravishad Gita Kirti. With lovely peacock plume upon his head, and fragrant flower placed upon each ear, he enters Braja's woods with graceful tread, a handsome dancing actor without peer. His golden yellow raiment brightly glows, his splendid garland reaches to his knees, and from his luscious lips the nectar flows and fills his flute with charming melodies. As Krishna thus begins his blissful day with cowherd friends who sing his glory sweet, he beautifies Vrindavan's forest way with fine impressions of his lotus feet. So these poems are free. You're welcome to them. And if anyone memorizes one, then you get 3 gold stars. I don't know, you just get a lot of nectar. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari.